Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Doug Thompson podcast, the Emerging Speaker series. And I want to apologize to everybody on Spectrum yesterday because obviously I caused the outage because right after I recorded with Chuck, the internet went out for everybody here in Texas, or at least most people here in Texas.
Mhm.
And I think I blamed it because I thought yesterday was Monday. It was one of those Tuesdays after a long holiday. It was still Monday, and internet acted like me. Anyway, with me today, that's all in the past. Angela Schaack, how are you doing?
I am doing well, thank you.
Good. Well, again, we're in the same area. We're in an area where I used to live up in Georgetown, and we met again through Carolyn, I think, through
Mhm.
the National Speakers Association here. And we're going to talk about some emerging speaking, but we're also going to talk a little bit about triathlon, some other stuff that goes along the way. So, Angela, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll sort of take it from there.
Oh, okay, thank you. Of course, I'm Angela Schaack. I'm the founder of Way to Wellness, which is a company we focus on holistic wellness, where my background is mental health, but over the years I've done a lot more research on physical well-being, and I have gotten some certifications along the way. So I've combined those to where we have a program that looks at what we call the big three, which is nutrition and physical movement, and of course all the lifestyle stuff like sleep and stress, and try to put together some personalized programs for folks who can sustain that, so that they can reduce their potential for disease and increase longevity and all kinds of good stuff.
Yeah, I got to ask you this question. So, does mental lead physical wellness? Does physical lead, or sort of explain the relationship between those two? Because they were related. A lot of it's a mental mindset and stuff. I find that I have that, and it definitely has an
Mhm.
impact on my body. But which is
Mhm.
the lead and which is the follow here?
Well, our brain pretty much does everything for us. So I would say mental more so. I think the only, because that's going to create all of those, physical things that
Mm-hmm.
occur when you're not in a good state of mind. I think the only time that might be reversed is if you have significant physical pain. If you've
Mm-hmm.
had an injury, or if you've ongoing pain, or some, condition that is chronic pain, that's when that begins to be the lead.
Yeah, I think it comes back down to the subconscious, which runs our body 90% of the
Mhm.
time or most of the time.
Mhm.
And a lot of it is what you feed it. I've been doing some, not manifestations. So, well, Dr. Joe Pienza, I think it is,
Mhm.
talks about sort of the mindset and because what you're thinking about is really sort of what you become and what you do, what you're open it. And so in that case,
Yes.
I think, like you said, the brain sort of controls everything.
Mhm.
On a good day. But as you said, if you get some of that chronic pain, it
Mhm.
does feed back in. And I've had that. I had that when my knee was before I got it replaced, and it
Mhm.
just sort of led, it just sort of my mental mindset went down because it just, you can absorb a lot. I can suffer a lot, as indicated by the Iron Man posters behind me. I can suffer for a long time,
Mhm.
but after a while, it does wear on you.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I'm fortunate. I haven't had anything terribly significant that lasted for a long time, but I work with people who do, and that it's challenging to get them to back into a program because of that. So yeah, I was just reading. You talk about the subconscious. I was reading a book. I'm in a book study called Incognito, and it really talked a lot about the subconscious, and ended up being like 80% of our work. It's coming
Yeah.
from the subconscious, which is kind of alarming because we like to think we're in control of our lives, and there's about 80% of that our brain is deciding for us. So keep that brain in good shape.
Yeah. It's amazing. I mean, it talks to us even when we're asleep. Think about
Hmm.
dreams. So there's no time off. The subconscious is constantly working on the body of something. And
Sure.
it's like in my TED talk where I talked about the inner bully. I mean, it's telling you
Mhm.
you're not worthy, you're not these, telling you all these lies all the time. And it gets to the point where it's sort of like anything that's routine. You don't really notice it anymore because it is your reality. It's
Right.
what normal looks like to you. And it
Hmm.
really feels uncomfortable when you start getting out of that normal.
Right.
And it's like with exercise. The first I've always found that when I got injured or something, those first 2 weeks back, or if I could make it past those first 2 weeks back of exercise, then I was okay. But it was just like the first 2 weeks are just horrible. You know, you can find all kinds of excuses not to do something, or, oh, you
Yeah.
know, you're sore today. What? Yeah, you haven't done
Mhm.
anything in 6 weeks. What do you expect?
I always count on that, knowing that the first half mile to a mile when I'm starting out, like on a run, for instance,
Hmm?
I always know I'm going to have all that. "Oh, I don't want to do this today. Should I just, turn around and go home?" But if I tell myself, I know that that's going to happen.
Hmm?
And after the first mile, those endorphins, they kick in, and then you start feeling good. And then, so yeah, you have to get through that first little initial push of your brain saying, "Hold it, wait, you shouldn't be doing this. We're trying
I'm
to
so happy I
conserve."
talked to you today because I thought I was the only one. I never had a run where the first mile didn't suck. I wanted to
Hmm.
quit. I wanted to, and like I
Yeah.
said, after a mile, I was okay. But I never had an enjoyable first mile of any
No.
run.
So if you get past that, you're all good.
Good. Well, thank you. We can end now because I feel better now because I know that I'm normal when it comes to that. When you talk to a group of people
Mhm.
about this, and you get on stage and stuff, you're sort of sharing your message. Sort of
Mhm.
walk around what a talk would look like.
Well, it's interesting because one of the big missions for Way to Wellness is education, and
Hmm?
it's pretty amazing and sometimes alarming to realize how little people know about their physical well-being and their mental well-being. And so I'm really on the small stage. I'm,
Hmm?
more community impact, working with smaller groups, and I do Way to Wellness hosts retreats in town to where we can offer some sessions, and also involves
Hmm?
some yoga and maybe some physical activity, but also there's always a session, typically on stress management, something regarding stress management, but a lot of different ways. So I really work with smaller groups as opposed to being on the big stage. Uh, and so when I first became part of the National Speakers Association, I was comparing myself to many of the people that you've talked to in your show, and feeling like, oh, do I fit this definition of being a speaker? And one of the positive things that it's done for me is to really send that message of, we are speakers when we're talking to a group of people, whether it's 5 people or 500 or 5,000. So that really got me on the track of doing more speaking and trying to expand, and go to larger groups. So I'm always in the process of looking for those opportunities. But I'm typically still in Texas. I only on one occasion, went out of town to talk to caregivers of paralyzed veterans and some of those kind of groups. But yeah, so it's pretty much local for me.
Well, but the message, it's just simply a matter of scale that you talk
Hmm.
about when that gets out, whether it's
Hmm.
50 or 5,000 or five. It's the
Hmm.
message, and it's how you sort of work getting that message out
Right.
that's important. And I think what you said is working through the speakers association with a bunch of other speakers, that it's helped you sort of frame that, or you're doing the workout for, you've done triathlons, you're doing
Mhm.
all the training and stuff up to the race day, and the speech is actually like the race day.
Right. Oh yeah, certainly. Have gotten huge benefit and connections and inspiration for the most part of like, hey, I can do this. I want to do this. This is a really cool thing to do, and an important thing to do as far as our mission to get the word out. Yeah, and then of course there's other aspects of the speaking business too that like how do you put together a presentation, and how do you make sure all your technology is working, and there's a writing piece of it as well, which
Mhm.
interests me because I'm now on that journey to write my first book. So all of that has been a wonderful part of being a member of that organization.
Well, and I think you talked about sort of, it's a holistic approach to things.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
this one little aspect, and like I meditate every morning, and I've been better off for that. So I mean, the meditation in itself doesn't seem, I mean, but the impact it has on everything else, it's like a cascade effect, is very measurable to do that. I can't measure it from a 1 day meditation. I can't tell, well, that was a bad one or a good one,
Hmm.
but just the impact over time. And I think it's the
It's a,
repetitions as you
yeah,
like
it's
your
a
training.
Absolutely. I was just going to compare that. It's like the practice. It's a practice just like a training, because if you're not, if you're doing it once a week or once a month, if you're training once a week or once a month, you're not going to get the results you're hoping for.
Well, let's talk about triathlon for a bit, because
Mhm.
I use that as I got into triathlon sort of to prove to people, or prove to myself more than anything else,
Mhm.
that I was destined for more than sitting on the sideline to do things. When I grew up, I have asthma. I'm having a little bit of it today,
Mhm.
but that when I grew up, they didn't really know how to. There wasn't a lot of treatments and stuff for it. It's like, okay, just sit over there on the side and don't die.
Mm.
That was sort of the treatment of it,
Yes.
and that kept me out of a lot of being a kid. I missed a lot of some of that stuff, at least from an organization perspective. At home, I'd be go playing with my friends and stuff. There was nothing, no
Mhm.
sitting on the side on that. But I got to where in my 30s, I was like, look, let's just go ahead and try this, right? And
Mhm.
it was sort of a whim. I started running, then I saw the Iron Man with Julie Moss, crawling across, as
Oh,
one of those things where it really
yes.
over. I'm like a lot of other people. I said, "Well, I got to go try that." I didn't start
Mhm.
off with Iron Man, but if you're not, that's back in the late '70s, I think it was, but
Mhm.
maybe early '80s. But I said, "Well, I can go do that." And I started off with Olympic distance, sprint distances, and things like that. And I've probably done over 200 in my career, various
Mhm.
different I was triathlon career in my time doing triathlons. But the Ironman was a different thing, and that's a very
Yeah.
mental thing, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
sort of what's your race history with that? What do you? I believe you did an Ironman.
Yeah, yeah, I've
Yeah.
done a
Okay.
full one, and now my go-to is the 70.3, which is the half, which is more
Yeah.
the distance, because it's easier on your body. You can train in a shorter period of time, and so I'm
Yeah.
still involved in that. But yeah, I was kind of like you. I had run off and on in college and beyond, and then I stopped to have a family, had three kids in about 6 years, and so with that, when I decided, the first thing I decided is I'm going to run a half marathon. I always start with a half. I'm going to run a
Hmm.
half marathon. And, I could have been saying I'm going to fly to the moon in the kind of shape I was in and where
Yeah.
I was in my life,
Yeah.
hung on to a few of those pounds from having kids. But so it was really an effort to get out there and do that. But that victory at the end, is just,
Hmm.
it kept me going. So just kept building on that, and finally got to the point where you just keep gradually kind of increasing your distance. You're like, well, if I can do a half, maybe I can do a whole marathon. And if I can do
Hmm.
that, maybe I can. I really switched to triathlons because I started having knee issues
Okay.
and plantar fasciitis. And so, these various physicians I would go to would say, you need to stop running so much and do something like ride a bike or swim. And I was
Hmm.
like, well, I know how to do that. I grew up in Florida. I was a lifeguard, so yeah, I can get in the pool and I can get on a bike. So I started gradually with the smaller ones and just kept going. And I think what really happens with those is you start, you know just like anything, you start surrounding yourself with people who are doing these things,
Hmm.
and it becomes something that you feel like, well, gosh, this person's not in perfect physical condition. They're not like the people we see on TV doing
Yeah.
triathlons. Um,
Yeah.
so it just starts creating that energy, and just is, that's what kept me going. So when people say, "Oh, I can never do that," I'm just like, well, if you really wanted to, you could. It'll take a bit of
Yeah.
time. So, but there's a story behind that if we have a few minutes about how I did the
Yeah.
full one. Okay, so I've done a lot of work in mental health, but the biggest part of my career before I started Weight at Wellness was in the public school system. I was an
Hmm.
elementary school counselor for a long time. And it was the beginning of the school year, and I was wanting to do a lesson about goal setting, and needed to be something that they were going to work on all year or most of the year, and it needed to be a bit of a challenge. And I thought, well, I need an example. So I thought of, this Iron Man that's been in the back of my mind of wanting to do. So I used that as an example. You have to work on it. You have to keep working on it. And so then after that day of lessons, talking to all of these, third, fourth, and fifth graders, I said, gosh, if I'm going to really drive this point home, I should probably do this. So I'm expecting them to follow their goal. So
Yeah.
I looked it up, and Houston had the Herman Memorial in May, which is at the end of the school year. And so it's like September. I started training. I already had some conditioning, so I wasn't starting from scratch. And by golly, I got to cross the finish line and take the picture back to say, "Hey, kiddos, this is I did it." So it was a really fulfilling moment for a lot of reasons, and that included.
Yeah, I mean, the Herman one, because I looked at that one too.
Mhm.
I've got tattoos from the 2 races that I've done. I've got
Mhm.
just an Iron Man logo on the back of my calf. Then on the side of the calf, I've got a Canadian maple leaf for the Iron Man Canada. So I get a lot of
Nice.
Canadian. Hey, you're Canadian. I said, well, no, I'm not, but I did spend
Mhm.
some time there. But I had my tattoo all picked out for the Texas one. It's gonna be an armadillo,
Mhm.
with the Texas flag painted on its, with the Iron Man logo on the side of it, and Texas flag off its tail.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, things happen. I didn't get to do that. But the swim
Mhm.
of that is very notorious for, the swim is almost always the challenge for most people that
Yeah.
haven't done a triathlon. Even those that have, it's like, this is going to suck if I can make it through it's there's no way that you can train for the the adrenaline, but also 2,000 of your closest friends all started swimming at the same time. Now I know that one's it's staggered a little bit, but
Yeah.
explain sort of your mindset to how did you get through that? I mean, because that's a nasty one.
The swim. Well, luckily, growing up in Florida, my first swimming lesson as a 6-year-old kid was in the ocean.
Okay. Oh
So
yeah. Okay.
so that was, and then I went to pools. And so the biggest thing about those swims is they're open water, and most
Yeah.
people haven't had a lot of practice to do that, and you really need to practice that
There's
because
no
it's
line on the bottom. There's no, and
no.
it's usually so muddy you can't see it anyways.
Yeah, the ones I've done
Yeah.
are, yeah, you can barely see past your elbow when you're swimming. So yeah, it's a completely different experience. You really need to get opportunities to do that before you do an event. But the thing you can't really plan for in those events, I mean, you can do a little bit of that if you have your friend and
Hmm.
you say, "Okay, friend, keep bumping into me while we're swimming, and
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
swim over me, and maybe cut in front of
Yeah. Pull
me."
my
And
goggles down,
so
kick me in the
you
face.
can't get a friend to do that because that's invariably going to happen. You're going to bump into
Yeah.
people that are going to swim over you. I got kicked in the face the first time, knocked my goggles off. But I'm not
Yeah.
trying to scare anyone away. I'm just saying if you practice all that
Well,
and then
if
it
you plan
happens,
for it, right?
plan
Yeah,
for
and
it. Right?
if it doesn't happen, which I've had races where I didn't have much of that, and that was just a
Yeah.
bonus. But if you plan
Yeah.
for it, and when I was a team and training mentor, we always say, look, plan for at least one thing to go wrong, and it won't
Hmm.
ruin your day, right? You simply go, okay, fine, this is it. I'll adjust to it and I'll go.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you get
Um,
out of the swim, right? You
mhm,
survive the swim because it's through
mhm.
this narrow channel. It's really like a big drainage ditch more than anything
Right.
else.
Yeah.
But
And the year
then
I
you
did
get
it, it
on,
rained. So,
yeah, and then you get then you got the bike ride, which went up north, right towards Conroe, didn't it?
mhm. I probably it's been so it hasn't been that long 2000. Oh yep, 16. That's been a while
Yeah.
that I did the full one. So I don't remember much of the ride, which is
Yeah.
probably I was just trying to get through it. I probably wasn't even really paying attention. I was just following the people in front of me,
Hmm.
trying to keep up. But yeah, it's a long ride, and there's a lot of turns, and because I'm not the fastest person, you kind of lag behind, and if you're not paying attention, I was at one time I looped around and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I just turned around and went the wrong way. And so
Yeah.
so I really try to keep up at least somebody
Yeah.
who's
Keep a
going right.
couple of people there that you know where they went, right? Stay close, stay in
Exactly.
touch where you can know where they go. I never ever, I've seen leaders go off track before, and I'm like, that's
Yeah.
not a problem with me. I just need to make sure there's enough of people around me. And
Right.
you can't. It's not like bike riding on the club on a Saturday where you're all sort of together and stuff on this. You've got to, you don't want to get drafting, so you have to sort of keep distance.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's a lot of mental time that you're really alone. All
Hmm.
you hear is that voice that you're talking about sort of in your head. And
Hmm.
mine says, why are you doing this? You paid $800 or whatever the entry fee was to go suffer for this. What kind of moron are you? Right? You don't deserve to be out here. There's not a lot of positive thoughts that are going through my head during a race.
Yeah. Well, what I usually try to get some songs in my head. So sometimes if I'm just really bored, I'll have a, my motivational song that I'll hum along, or, and of course, a lot of it, you're checking your watch. You have to pay attention to nutrition, how much,
Mm-hmm.
you're getting your sips out of your, bottle of water. It's just, for me, it's just, constantly assessing where I am and making adjustments. Because,
Yeah, you're sort of doing a cycle. Okay, what time is? Where am I at? What I've got to do, and you sort of make a routine, as you said, that you can get through it. Because if you think about it, oh, I'm riding 112 miles after I've swam for this, and I need to eat because I know I've got a full marathon to run after this. It's if you think about it as a whole, it's a very scary thought. My because I've like my first one I finished in 16 hours and 20 minutes. I mean, it was a very long day. I don't remember. The day flew by. If I go back and think about it now, I can. It's been almost 2 decades, but it's it just flew by, and it was life. If you think about that as the big stage, right, where you go through it, and there's enough energy you get from people, other fellow competitors, fellow athletes. I always found that I was always more encouraging of them than I thought. I would think more about them than worrying about myself. And I found that helped me get through too, because I was caring for other people. I was helping push. I saw, like you said, I saw people that were suffering more than I was at the time and encouraged them to go on. It gave me positive energy. So I think it's like you're feeding our mind what we, practice what you preach.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And along the way, it's, the folks, I'm always so thankful for the folks who come out and volunteer for those things. And they're
Yeah.
always encouraging, and, so I really appreciate that too.
Yeah.
But you're right. It is one of those kind of things. And I've seen people half my age, who were sitting on the sidelines holding their stomachs, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
they didn't eat well. They probably didn't,
It's
but,
hard. And then that's always the crapshoot. You never know what the weather's going to have. And my first one, I've been training in 70-degree weather out in Seattle, and we go out to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and it's 105 degrees. So what, if from a nutrition standpoint, what maybe works there doesn't work when it's that hot. Your
Right.
body needs different things, like chicken broth. Who would have thought chicken broth on the run? That's disgusting. I loved it. It was like an addictive drug when I got on the run. It gave you sodium, it gave you these other things, but it is really sort of weird how that plays out. And as your nutrition standpoint, what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, I think that nutrition is as important, maybe even more so, but at least as important as training for each leg of the event, or whatever event you're doing. If you're doing some long events, because that's what gets people typically on the side, is they haven't planned that out quite as well. And and you have to train with the things that they have on the course. So you really
Yeah.
need to investigate that, so that, if you're only going to have access to certain brands or certain things, because you can't carry all the stuff you want to carry. You carry some of it,
Yeah.
but not all of it. So that's an important piece of it, because
Yeah.
I made that mistake once where I ran out of, my energy gels, and I thought, well, I could just use this one. It's a different brand, and it didn't work out for me very well. So, yeah, you have to be just smart about it and think about all those things, which is why I do the training programs. I do some triathlon training for beginners. I'm not a certified trainer. I'm a certified group, and I went back and got my certification for group fitness instruction, so I could do this legitimately. But but I just think people forget about those small details that make a big difference.
Well, and that's an important thing. Take it from somebody that's done it a few times. And I don't necessarily coach people. I give people advice and say, here's what worked for me. Go seek out somebody else, because somebody else knows your body. And like I said, you can bring the nutrition piece into that as well, and as well as the mindset. So you sort of give a lot of different perspectives on that in your program that actually makes it more well-rounded, because focusing on, hey, how do I reduce my run time by 10 minutes in a marathon? That's a different type thing than holistically, how do I beat my time from the last time I did it? Or how do I feel better at the end of it? I'm not totally, I'm not crawling across after I pooped my pants. So
Yeah, and those are the things that happen that people,
Yeah.
certainly want to avoid. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm really excited about doing that. And of course, this time of year, we're, probably won't get started for another couple of months, but starting to get people to sign up for that, because it's, again, I've been doing this for a long time. I've done, sprint distance all the way to full Ironman. I've done a few of them, and so I've gotten a little smarter with each one, and would be happy to share that my knowledge with others and hopefully help them along the way.
Well, that's a wonderful thing. As I say, we're all sort of on the road to mastery, and it's our responsibility to help those that are behind us, and ask for help those that are in front of us. And so it's sort of a symbiotic relationship. So how to best get a hold of you, Angela, if they want to interested and learn more about that?
I put most of my stuff on my website. So,
Okay.
and I know you're going to list that in the show notes, but the website has information about all the services, or most of them that Way to Wellness presents. And so we still do some retreats. We don't have anything scheduled right at the moment. Again, summer is sort of a vacation time for Way to Wellness because people are not wanting to be outdoors.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to start a program at that point in time.
So, and we do some indoor things too. And so I have some events coming up in the fall, and we'll start a training program for a beginner triathlon. And if they want to reach out, I've got some information about all that stuff on my website, and there's a way to contact me, and I'd be happy to talk with them. I do, initial consults, no cost, just to chat and see if one of the services we have fits their need.
And if you got a business and you're looking for sort of this group program to make everybody better, I mean, when I worked at Microsoft, we had a whole group of triathlons, and they were some of the highest performing people in the company. Mm-hmm. So you can balance that. Really, if you've got a physical body, your body and mental is fit, you're better at your other stuff on that. So if you want to reach out to Angela, she'd be a great speaker to have come by and talk to the group and go on to do things as well. So Angela, thanks a lot. Get to go out and try not to melt in this heat that we've got coming back. It was great talking with you.
Thank you for having me on today.